Our guest this episode is Steve Whittington, CEO, strategist, and host of Driving Growth, the Go-to-Market podcast. Steve helps B2B companies scale with confidence by building revenue factories, systems that bring sales, marketing, and customer experience into alignment. As president of Roadmap Agency and CEO of Boombright Media, he's guided hundreds of organizations towards predictable, sustainable growth. Steve turns complexity into clarity and momentum. Here to show how alignment, systems, and communication drive real growth, please welcome to the podcast, Steve Whittington. Steve, welcome.
Welcome to the Engaging Personalities Podcast. I'm Anders Belanger, founder and CEO of Engagify, where we're on a mission to rehumanize business through engagement. We believe that we can all be more successful if we can command attention and deepen connection. So stick around to the end of the show and we'll reveal how you can be our next guest on a future episode. So let's get ready to engage.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is going to be a ton of fun.
Yeah, good. Well, and it's funny how, people who are into, sales and marketing can like geek out about sales and marketing. Like you're in the right place if that's the case. Let's rewind and kind of go back. How did you fall into this world? Because sometimes we do fall into it. Sometimes it's straight out of the gate. That's what you want. What was your backstory, Steve?
Well, yeah, fall into it is probably appropriate. I came out of university with a vision of leading an HR department. And that being said, when I got out of university, I had a friend that was starting a business. And so we had a startup and he needed support in, getting revenue. So then I just started doing the sales with some business acumen that I had from my university degree, which was a BCom honors. And I kind of fell in love with the idea of sales. And so then I stayed doing that for the rest of my career. And I always have done sales and marketing together. So before RevOps was a term, I was always doing that. And I look at it as a gift in hindsight, where I had sales divisions or departments reporting to me and marketing departments reporting to me at the same time. And often I came into the organization first as the marketer and then inherited the sales team. And so I had a different lens to it. I was sort of marketing first and trying to drive things from a brand perspective and get leads in and then qualify it to actually leads that were working and selling. So yeah, I fell into it a long, long time ago and like right from the start and didn't run away from it, because I understood that revenue is the lifeblood of a company, and that's where it's at. And loved driving the business that way.
There's some stat, and you're going to probably pull it up right away, but it's something, or know it, is that most businesses fail within 7 years due to a lack of sales, which is such a funny, I guess so, right? It is definitely the lifeblood, because you're not going to stick around very long without that. Now, when you talk about seeing it from a different lens, a different perspective, like smaller businesses kind of have that ability to have that as well. Like as far as my company too, sales and marketing is so tightly integrated because one begins the other very quickly, as opposed to, being siloed. And so what are some of the things that you do when you work with a company to, ramp up their revenue, to unsilo or to integrate those departments?
Yeah, well, the first thing is I just rip the wall down, if I'm going to be blunt. And I am a bit of a blunt instrument when I come into working with organizations. I don't hold anything back. I've been hired by companies to say, here's our goal, and it's the start of the fiscal, and we want you to help coach us and come in and work with our teams and put stuff in place to help us hit that goal. And I can quickly say within like 3 to 6 weeks that if they're going to hit that goal. A lot of times, B2B companies have very long sales cycles. And if they don't have certain stuff in place for their pipeline, their fiscal is not going to happen. But so to back up, what's the first thing I do? I make sales and marketing have the same meeting. That's the first thing I do.
Yeah.
I bring them together. Marketing comes and sits in on the sales meetings, and then marketing reports to the sales team as to what they have going on. And then I align them on the exact same metrics. A lot of times when you get to a certain size of company, call it about the $10 million crowd, they start to have different departments that are off doing their own things. And so I just rip that wall down and I make them have the exact same meeting. They have a revenue meeting and they look at the same metrics. And then all of a sudden, marketing starts to figure out what is really going to drive revenue growth. What are the things that matter? And they start to get really, really critical and use their mathematical minds to help support sales on how they're both going to hit the goals. And so step
Mhm.
one, get them together, same numbers that they're looking at week over week.
Yeah. And that the mindset about calling them the same thing, getting them on the same team, there
Yeah.
is a cultural piece to that as well. I think there's certainly an adjustment period. What is the typical response of teams that are kind of jammed in together like this and haven't associated like that before?
So I have found for the most part that marketing is excited that they can actually have access to the information they need to do their job. And then um, let me like I rename it's no longer sales and marketing, it's a revenue team, right? So we're all responsible for revenue. But generally, yeah, very, very excited that they're understanding what truly makes sales cross the line. And so they love being part of it. And then sales is excited when they start to see things change to give them better supports to do their job. So generally, really quickly, there's a level of excitement that they're working together towards the same goal. That's what I see. I haven't seen a ton of resistance, to be honest. It's like fine, it's like a sigh of relief. Finally, for whatever reason, we had this wall and now it's no longer there.
That's great because that type of that type of major change could put up a lot of resistance, and it could be hard to create change that point of view. Now, when you talk about revenue factory, like in the introduction, I mentioned that.
Mhm.
What is that idea of everyone manufacturing the sale, or do you want to speak to that? And like, what is your concept
Yeah.
of revenue factory for people? Because I think that's different. I like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, sales and marketing, as far as I'm concerned, are a science. I know that there's creativity to design and stuff like that that you do on the marketing function. And there's an art to how you approach and build relationships and pitch and stuff like that with customers on the sales side, for sure. But all of this can be systemized and engineered. So the first thing that I work with sales and marketing teams, let's stop saying that, revenue teams. First thing I do when I work with revenue teams is I eliminate I eliminate the hope cast. So they will have, hey, we're going to hit
Yeah.
this goal, and they hope they're going to hit it, and they don't know the unit economics they need to get there. So what we do is we break things down. Now, most B2B companies that are traditional, so I'm not talking about software as a service type folks, they they haven't totally grasped the fact that they have accounts that are can be easily split when they look in their P&L. Okay, we've got strategic accounts, we've got growth accounts, and we've got transactional accounts. Those are the three types of accounts: tier one, tier two, tier three. And those accounts are providing them with reoccurring revenue. Sometimes it's every 2 years, but most times it's every year they've got reoccurring revenue, not recurring monthly like
Right.
a utility, but reoccurring. So they need to plan that out and they need to understand what that block of business is. And so let's just use a simple example. We hope to get to 50 million bucks. Our accounts are 10 million bucks. We got a $5 million gap. So we got to figure out the unit economics of how to actually solve for that $5 million gap. Now that can be adding in a certain amount of accounts. That can be expanding your current book of business. There's several ways you need to do it, but you break it down with the unit economics that give you targets that then get backed up to activity metrics. Okay. So when you're building a revenue factory, it gets very, very scientific as what are all the different things that we have to do every week to end up building out to our goals. Okay. And then everything can be broken down by your sales process, and you can analyze that. You can analyze the volumetrics of your sales process, the conversion rates of your sales process, and back it up into the awareness funnel with your marketing functions. So that's really top level of what it is that we do, but we build a system that becomes engineered specifically for each customer and the nuances of what their business and their market is, right?
Hmm. Hmm. And yeah, it really, so that factory, they are manufacturing these little bits, to build to a greater whole in terms of
Yeah.
whatever types of sales, whether you're expanding, whether you're producing new
Yeah, like a
business, what have you. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of agencies we brought in for a tactic, right? Like, they need to do demand generation and so they can build a bunch of leads that don't actually go through the rest of the process. So you really have to look at it as an entire system, right? And then get all your folks, the three legs of the stool are your marketing, your sales, and your customer service, and that creates the revenue team, which then has all the metrics that build your revenue factory.
And do you help companies on all three legs of the stool, like on the revenue side of things, but also the customer service to make sure they're in alignment in the stool
Yeah, I
legs are all the same length, if you
I
will,
mean,
to make sure that's balanced?
a long time ago, I wrote a book called Thriving in the Customer Age, because before revenue teams, this whole idea of RevOps became fashionable, and because you can see with the gray in my beard, I was doing this kind of stuff like I'm a professional Canadian professional sales certified. Gosh, like I had to send an audio tape, like a cassette tape to Toronto to get, that was that long ago, right? Certified marketer. And then when certification for customer experience came out, I'm like, I need to jump on that. And there is not many in Canada. I mean, the numbers have grown, but I have certification in that because I understood that those three elements were critical to the whole entire customer experience. And so then bringing them together, I started bringing those together in my corporate career. And then now as a professional service organization, we look at all those aspects and how they actually work together. And that is part of the revenue factory because when you look at that team, that revenue team, you have to make sure you resource those three areas appropriately. So oftentimes you'll see in smaller sales orgs that they're doing warranty and customer service. And then we're like wondering why they aren't able to do the outbound or account management they need to do customer acquisition or customer expansion. It's because they haven't resourced customer service appropriately. And so yet you do have
Right.
to look at it holistically.
Yeah. And do you find that there is, when you come into companies, some of them have, they're either over resourced on one side or they're just not funding, any of these legs? Like, is it lopsided most of the time? And that's, part of the things that you fix when you come in?
For the most part, there's a lack of awareness of the level of resourcing that's required. So sometimes you're over-resourced in one area, but for the most part, there's not the ability to um, justify the resourcing because they haven't put together the numbers that prove it out. So you
Right.
can justify additional marketing resources if you're providing the lead volume that then goes into your sales pipeline, which then creates additional sales from your existing accounts and net new logos, right? But if you can't do that mathematical formula, it's hard to justify that. It's kind of like a gut feel, right? Same with if you can look at, well, if we took this customer service function off a sales team member, which means that they will then be able to do these activities, which will equal X in new revenue and expansion revenue. Well, sure, we can afford
Yeah.
that CSR, no problem.
Yeah.
But
You
until
need
you
to
get
do
that
that
mathematical
Plinko
formula,
machine to make sure everything lines up. And
yeah,
when you see the math work, then
yeah.
it's no longer a gut instinct. It's an
Yeah, so
investment.
like one of the so like I when we start to look at everything, we define different activities as kind of like motions, go-to-market motions. And one I think of the most misunderstood, and this is, you mean you're going to geek out on this pretty quick, trade shows. I love trade shows. I love trade shows. I think if
Me
you've got
too.
a trade show
Yeah.
and you work it appropriately,
Yeah.
in my corporate career, I had trade show teams and people had to almost like interview to get on it because I wanted to make
Yeah.
sure I had the superstars on there that had lots of energy and we're going to engage with the clients. And then, of course, you have your goals, but when you go to it and then you hit those goals and every day you sort of see what's going on, say, how are we doing? Are we trending above, below? What are we doing? What can we do different? All that sort of stuff. But any rate, you take that motion of a trade show and you take the costs and the resourcing towards it, and you have a goal and you can see how efficient it is. And what I've found when you use that mathematical modeling, this is where it comes down to justifying resourcing. It's often the case where people look at trade show opportunities and they're so misunderstood by what they could be doing or should be doing, then like, oh my gosh, I need to make sure I resource this. Can we do more trade shows? Because they're a great opportunity if we work them appropriately. But you mathematically model out what that opportunity is. And trade shows are, I think they're something that are going to grow, since the pandemic, as they've been growing, going up in the
Coming
right. And I
back.
think they
Yeah.
keep going because I mean, people are tired of video interaction, non-human interaction, AI interaction. They want to actually talk to somebody. And if you can mathematically model what that opportunity is, then resource it
Yeah.
appropriately. Yeah.
Well, and the other piece, and you did touch on the AI there, Steve, that trust, you know, events or in-person interactions have the highest level of trust
Oh,
across
yes.
any communication channel, if you will,
Yep.
for marketing. So, if we want to like straight from the horse's mouth, interact with someone and know that we can trust that information, events are where it's at. Now, I keep waiting for the events to kind of really boom because that's kind of been the prediction we've seen from other thought leaders. And even Mark Cuban said something along those lines too, right? When every video is fake, how
Yeah.
what are we going to put our trust in? It's what's in front of our eyes in person, right? And so, how where are you on AI as far as, I mean, obviously there's some great productivity gains. It's changing the world, uh, but there's also, kind of a downside to it. Companies who shifted hard AI are hiring back some people. What have you seen out there, Steve? What's your experience been and your take?
Well, I mean, I am on boards and I'm across several organizations advising lots of folks in what I find is most companies are still just, I would say, playing with it and getting some minor productivity gains. They haven't actually systemized it. Roadmap, we've systemized it. It's in our SOPs. We've been able to articulate, you know, earned value as a result of it, which has increased our profitability as a result of leveraging AI. I'm bullish on AI, using it as something that's going to enhance what I do, not replace, but enhance.
Hmm.
Um, maybe that future where I'm not needed down the road will come to play. But I find that my worry, actually, with AI is that people get over reliant on it, and the expertise that's needed to validate what AI is producing is no longer in our marketplace. So,
Right.
so what happens when this graybeard isn't around to validate what's actually being produced by AI? That's a concern I have. But right now, it amplifies and supports everything that we do at Roadmap. Um, but we have senior level people that are experts in the field, and so it's a tool. It's a productivity tool for us. That's where I'm at. But overall, it's being abused. We see that, and
That's what I'm kind of getting at. Like,
yeah.
I just sorry to interrupt, but I was just going to say, like, I get phoned by AI
Hmm.
agents, and as soon as I find out it's AI, I hang up. Right?
For
It's
sure.
like the inauthenticity of it almost makes it like they just make it up in numbers, though. That's the way people look at it, right? It doesn't cost them anything to make all these
Yeah.
calls, but I feel like it's wrecking things out there in the market. Maybe how people respond, that sort of thing. Oh,
Well, it's a trend that we've gone through before. Like I remember back in sales when I had banks of fax machines, right? You had 11 fax machine as banks, and you'd send out mass fax. I mean, so that's sort of hinting at how old I am, but I mean, this is the next productivity tool, right?
yeah,
And the key of it is that if your message doesn't resonate with your customer and you don't have something that provides value, you can send out 10,000 faxes and nothing's going to come back. Or you can have 10,000 messages going out a minute with AI now and nothing's going to come back. I really think that the fundamentals of understanding your customer, understanding the problem you're solving, and then be able to provide that in an impact which resonates with them in a message medium that they need. So if they need to be talking to you face to face at a trade show, that's where you need to be in
yeah.
sales. If they need to talk to you on the phone, that's where they need to that's where you need to be. Like I do a ton of like this is something I use all the time because you have that human to human connection.
Yes, yes. And so few people use the phone these days, and it's funny how things have changed. So I've called up some people without giving them a text heads up, and I almost felt bad because it's suddenly something has changed where we kind of aren't used to taking direct calls as much as we used to, right? We used to, that was the only
Yeah,
thing we used to do, but yeah,
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, you've got that ability to text people beforehand. It's like, hey, can I give you a quick call? Like
yeah.
that's a great trust that they've given you to have access to their personal device. Um, yeah, talking on the phone is not dead.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're always encouraging our kids to just call their friends up, right? Like I'd rather them be on the phone chatting with someone like one of their friends as opposed to just texting
Right.
back and forth and all this. It's just the social skills that are used, just expressing themselves. It's kind of a different and in real time, right? Not overthinking things and
Yeah.
there's a lot of value in there.
It,
Um, yeah, go ahead.
right. Back to AI though, the
Yeah,
impact on events. I think all of that is just going to continue to push the need for more in-person events.
yeah,
So, because it's been abused, people are going to be like, I need to see this person face to face because I can't trust whatever else is going on. And so, yeah, I am bullish on the fact that in-person events are going to continue to grow, at least in this current cycle of how we are, embracing the technology and then, abusing what we've been given.
yeah. It's we're pushing people to something real in a sense, right?
Hmm.
It's,
Yep,
it's,
agreed.
it's kind of what's happening. Let's talk a little bit about the customer journey and how you see customer journeys play out. Do you have a philosophy? Do you have a certain way of looking at it when you come in and work with companies?
Well, like mapping the customer journey has gotten
Yeah, yeah,
more difficult than it used to be because it's less linear. I remember saying it's squiggly, but now it's more like there's a whole bunch of touch points until people actually go from just kind of being aware to actually engaging. And so that the challenge I find in the customer journey that a lot of sales teams and marketing teams are are struggling with is how many times they need to actually touch that
right.
prospect to move them into their funnel, right?
Uh,
So that's the challenge that's happening. But
and,
like,
and so, Steve, that's that demand generation, multiple attribution,
yeah,
but then when do they enter that buying window kind of thing,
yeah,
right? Like that's that capturing that
yeah.
piece.
Yeah. And so, it used to be pretty linear, or at least we thought it was, I guess maybe more accurate. Um, so that's where when I start to look at the cost of growth and the cost of acquisition, you can put in some of those plays that don't necessarily have direct attribution. So if you're doing stuff to build brand awareness in the marketplace, such as a podcast, for instance, right? It's sort of tough sometimes to get direct attribution from it, but you
Yeah,
know that it's being listened to, your clients are understanding from it, you're gaining traction and awareness, all that sort of stuff. So you can put that total resource cost into part of your cost of acquisition so that it's attributed, and you can decide if these kind of things are having a lift on the other things that you're doing. So that's the challenge that folks have with actually justifying how messy it's gotten at the top of the funnel. But
right.
all that said and done, back to the fundamentals of mapping the customer journey, you really do need to sit there and create your hypothesis map of these are the steps that we think people are going through, that what their emotions are at the various different levels of, how they're seeking to get educated, then actually trying to get a problem solved, and then actually selecting and determining who they're going to partner with, all those different steps. And then, of course, the sales process that you have, then the onboarding process, then of course when they become a full-time account and the expansion, like all that should be mapped out. The life cycle should be entirely mapped out and all the steps. Do all that as your hypothesis with your internal teams, and then go do it with your customers to validate it. That's the step that
Mm.
most people forget
So
because,
backtrack once a customer becomes a customer, or maybe even
yeah, take a
before they become a
customer.
customer, and say,
Yeah.
"How did you hear about us?
Yep.
What
Walk
all
them through
things
the
did you
entire thing.
consume?"
Yep.
Yeah,
Walk them through the entire thing. Do research. Form a customer council and say, hey,
yeah,
throw it up on the whiteboard, whatever. Go through it all and say, is this really what happened? Validate it.
yeah, yeah. That's a good step to do because I think sometimes we well, either we think we're too smart, whether this works, Or, but that's where the rubber meets the road is, talking to the
Yeah,
customer.
and that goes for, your ideal client profile that you build and the
Yeah.
personas in the buying committee within that ideal client profile. That's what you create is your hypothesis. And
Mhm.
then when you've got those people that are tiered in your top clients, then of course when you're doing customer research, validate it. Is this really who you are? Is this really what your company is? And the firmographics are, public knowledge for the most part. So that part's easy. But actually going into the various different buyer personalities, those personas, that's you got to validate it. It's all hypothesis until you actually talk to those people.
Yeah. And that's kind of where the science gets proven out or not, right? When you talk about
Exactly.
the science of sales and marketing.
Yeah.
Um, that's, that whole, we were talking just a bit about that attribution there, Steve, and like that demand generation piece, which I feel like is newish too, right? Like the term demand generation isn't
Hmm.
super old. You got the old school, sales people just like leads. It's all about leads, right?
Yeah.
And it's just we're in a new time where there is this both can exist at the same time, and one begets the other, and that sort of thing. So, was that something that you initially grasped right away, or did you have to kind of reconcile that for yourself?
So, I come from an industry like, traditional industries, manufacturing, short line ag dealerships, industrial dealerships, that sort of stuff. And, when you're in boom times, like, so if you rewind the clock to say, you know, 2013 or, 2005, that sort of stuff, like basically yell and sell worked, right? We have it in stock. You better come get it before it's gone. Otherwise, it's your fault. And you're going to pay what we've listed the price on because there's a scarcity in the marketplace.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and then of course, times change. It's like, oh, what do we do? So you better have been building your brand and your customer experience so that people remember that you've taken care of them, so they come back to you when it's, the scarcity isn't there. Um, so I first got onto this when I realized that, or I felt that the customer experience at an organization in which I was part of the leadership wasn't fulfilling the promise of what the marketplace needed. And so I started to look at the demand that we were creating and then the lead capture that we were getting and the customer experience that we were providing, and it was incongruent. And I thought about it a long time, and I'm like, okay, so that's where I like, the revenue team, where you really have to push all this through everything to make sure that everything's congruent. So if you are actually pushing a brand promise into the marketplace, you have to make sure everybody is educated on it all across the entire organization so that brand promise lives up to be true. And so why is that brand promise, say, important when you're marketing, say, on volume and price? Like that's your competitive advantage is price. Well, the brand promise dictates the experience you're going to give. That is like literally, your branded experience is what the customer walks away with, how they felt. And so then your marketing or your message or your branding has to actually take that branded experience and then articulate it in such that it's going to build awareness that people want to be treated that way. And that's really when I started to understand this, I'm like, well, how do we attract more customers? We we need to attract them with understanding how we're going to make them feel, how we're going to treat them,
Yeah.
and get that into the marketplace first, and all the other stuff will happen. So you've got your various different forms of advertising, then you have your marketing overarching with the brand promise that you're bringing, the strategic narrative that you're bringing to the marketplace. So when you're creating a go-to-market system, you do have to be aware of that dome that goes over everything, this, the strategic narrative, which has your brand promise, and then the various different motions within it, which are going to drive leads and meet those obligations. But they all have to be in place. And more so now today than ever before, because people would say, see a price on something or see something, and they just, decide that they're going to engage with the selling process. But now there's so much research that occurs by a buyer, and they can find that everywhere. So you have to make sure everything is nice and tight under that dome, so to speak, so that you have a strategic narrative that literally filters through every part of your go-to-market system. And that's that's what tends to be missed now, is
Yeah.
that people haven't sort of they've gotten too far on the, hey, we just need leads, and they don't realize that they have to make sure that they have the entire thing tight, the entire experience that they're providing to their customers, which can be, if you're a manufacturer, and customers, and then of course your channel partners.
For the people just listening, like Steve, I can see that you visualize this very clearly in the way that the dome in your hands, and like, the structure is this is so clear to you. And you mentioned you wrote a book before. Did you have more than one book, or is it, what was the, can you say the
Just the
book
one.
again?
I am going to
Okay.
come. It was 2017,
Yes.
so, before the
Okay.
pandemic, and it's called Thriving in the
Okay.
Customer Age.
Okay.
I'm a big believer, like, just do something right, and so you get it out there,
Yeah.
and it's a book of its time, and so there's kind of like I would say it's almost like the evolution of my thoughts today. I'm going to say that was, I don't know, grade 6, and now I'm at grade 12, so to speak. I've still got lots to go. I have to go. I have to keep learning. You're always learning, always getting better, mountain with no top. So yeah, a lot of the stuff I talk about, you can see different types of metrics in there. Um, but that was years ago, so it's kind of like
Yeah.
a memory lane, and it's a book for its time. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, and like I said, I think you have such a grasp on this stuff that I hope there's a part 2 of that book, or a new book coming out, because people can really dig into that. And speaking of digging into that, how can people reach out to you? I know you've got Roadmap and Boom Bright Media. Can you
Yeah,
kind of maybe talk a little bit about the fit for who's right for what, and how can
for
people can
sure.
reach out?
Yeah. So, Roadmap, we are architects of go-to-market systems. Boom Bright Media, we provide digital solutions to amplify your brand message. So they're two separate, distinct companies that I'm involved with both, and having a ton of fun with both. What we've talked about today was Roadmap, and really, I think, which could be a lot of fun for folks, is we are doing ongoing research to determine your go-to-market readiness. And so, if you go to weareroadmap.com, you'll be able to see that you can apply to be part of our go-to-market acceleration fund and be part of the research. And we're specifically researching B2B companies, and building an index out that sort of says, this is what we see in the marketplace. This is how you stack up. Here's some quick wins to help you, 2x your revenue. So
Very cool. Awesome. And people can reach out to you at either of those
yeah,
websites, I guess. And
absolutely. And LinkedIn.
in LinkedIn. Okay. And Steve Whittington. Okay, good. Excellent. Well, Steve, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time and sharing your expertise with us.
It was a ton of fun.
Awesome. And to all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in once again. And until next time, you know what to do. Stay engaged.
Thank you so much for listening to Engaging Personalities. If you believe this world needs more engagement, and you're an industry leader, or you have an interesting take on rehumanizing business, go to go.engagify.ai/podcast-guest to apply and come on the show. If you got something out of this interview, do you mind sharing it on your social media? Just grab a quick screenshot with your phone and text it to a friend, or post it on the socials. If you know someone that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show. Include the hashtag Engaging Personalities. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episode, go ahead and subscribe. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and mean a lot to me and my team. Want to know more? Go to our website, engagify.ai, or follow me on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening, and stay engaged.